asking me an extra question. Hi, Troy Love.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm doing well at the end of March. I can't believe it.
I
So
know, right?
I started sharing before I hit record that I've had so many people while we're waiting for questions, and they will come, but I've had so many people just even in the last week that have been like some of them have identified their wounds, like I know that I go act out when I feel abandoned. And
Mm.
so rather than connecting with my partner or my family, I'm going off in this direction. So they have this awareness of this, and they, continue the behaviors, which is, of course, knowing the why is interesting, but it doesn't change the behaviors. Um, and then I've also had a number of people that are like, once I get over that, so they're talking about like, I'm going to just, I'm going to do the work, I'm going to get healed, and then I'm never going to have to, struggle with these, things again. And then the other one that has come up a lot again lately too is shame. I mentioned just prior to hitting record that I had a partner reach out and her husband's therapist won't use any language around these issues because it causes him shame, and she's like, I know it was like one of those like you can't fix something if you don't know what it is kind of thing. They were both aware of that, but I was like, well, yeah, if we always permit ourselves to go into that shame, we're always going to be stuck in shame. So
Mm.
I'm giving you some stuff to talk about until we get some questions. So
Awesome.
there you
Okay.
go.
Thank you. And if we're open to all questions, and so if you want to put them in the Q&A, it's easier for us to manage that in the Q&A box than it is in the
Yes,
chat. So if you want to, you can either do it anonymously or use your name. We don't usually use your name
we
when we
won't say
talk,
it. Yeah.
but you can do that either way. So one of the things that I've learned throughout this journey is that what people think that they're addicted to porn, or they think they're addicted to, you know, uh, prostitutes, or they think they're addicted to Jack in the Box or whatever. But what they're really addicted to is shame.
Mm,
Because
mm,
at the core, the deep and abiding belief is that they're flawed and defective, and that's the operating system that they run with. And so they actually need to behave in a way that validates that. And so when their wounds are stirred up and those core beliefs get amplified, they'll go right into the addiction cycle as a way of trying to numb the pain. But the end result is shame. It just continues to verify and validate that they are not enough, that there's something wrong with them. And so that is actually what I believe they're trying to achieve. It's counterintuitive and it doesn't serve us at all, but we keep going there because that's what we wholeheartedly believe. And so when we actually can start to like separate and start to connect with the truth that maybe I am enough, and we can start to show some love for me and love for others, my need to continue to validate that I'm a piece of crap starts to diminish, and I don't need to keep acting out like that anymore. So those are some of my thoughts about that.
yeah. Well, and to your point is whether it's, porn or what, alcohol or whatever it is, it is absolutely a maladaptive coping mechanism. It works in the moment, but it doesn't, it continues that shame and makes things worse ultimately. But it's a tough cycle to get out of. So speaking of a tough cycle to get out of, my PA is still lying. Just recently, 7 months after discovery, admitted that porn was a problem in his last marriage. Up till then, it was only since me. How can I ever get him to tell the truth?
Well, you can't. So that's the sad part of that. You can't force anybody to do anything. Um, you can provide a place of safety, which is it's a catch 22 for the partner, because it's not safe when your partner's lying to you. That doesn't feel safe. You can, though, create a place of safety where your partner can share with you some of the stuff that they're ashamed about, and the reason why they don't tell you stuff is because they're ashamed about it. They're afraid of how you're going to react, what you're going to do, um, and so they lie. And that's not your fault that they do that. A lot of times when a person tells the truth and then the partner freaks out, it what it unfortunately does is convinces the addict, see, I can't tell the truth, because if I tell the truth, you're just going to freak out. That's not why we tell the truth. Is to However you react is however you react. I tell the truth because I need to be in integrity with myself, but a lot of people haven't got to that place, and so they do that. So you can create some safety by not reacting. What we recommend for you is going to some groups where you can react all you want and get some support from other partners. But at the end of the day, you can't. And so if your partner is unwilling to tell the truth and continues to lie, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to convince your partner to do something other than that. You can encourage your partner to go to therapy. You can convince them to go to 12-step meetings, or maybe they'll work with a sponsor, and maybe they'll start to learn that it's okay to just share their deep, dark secrets, and they're not going to be shunned for the rest of their life. But at the end of the day, that that's on them.
Yeah, well, 7 months is good if, but I'm qualifying this. You know, what has he been doing for his recovery journey? I mean, this takes a long time. I mean, real recovery is, and I don't want to scare anybody away, but you're really looking at like 2 to 5 years for people to really be integrating that if they're doing the work. Just stopping the behavior is abstinence. It does not change anything else. And so I don't know if you guys have a 24-hour rule or whatever it is, but it's a contract, and the agreement is, I will tell you the truth, and if I don't, I'm going to come back within 24 hours and I'm going to tell you the truth. And it's okay to say, I was afraid of your reaction and I didn't tell the whole truth, or I lied about this. And and just like Troy was saying, if it's a safe space, you don't have to be happy that he lied, but but this is how it starts to shift, is like, okay, and maybe it's at 23 hours and 59 minutes the first time, but then maybe it was like, oh, okay, my partner tolerated that. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was. And it shows that we can get closer together again. I mean, that's the goal of all of this work, is that fractured relationships can heal and there can be trust built, and trust is not built when there's the consistent lying going on. Dr. Rob's book, Out of the Doghouse, he uses an example of one of his clients. They got a divorce because he lied about taking out the trash. And it sounds so mundane, but she's like, if I can't trust you about taking out the trash, how can I trust you about anything else? So it's valid. But somebody this early in the process, I don't know what he's doing, how many 12-step meetings he's going to, what step he's working on in 12-step, how often he's seeing a qualified professional. Has he done our porn addiction 101 work group? I'll put the link for that, type of stuff. So the more work he does, the more of a solid foundation, he gets, and so that using the lies, and we lie to ourselves first. Denial is lying to myself, and then, I will lie to everyone else. So it takes time. Healthy boundaries for you. I do this all the time. Healthy boundaries for you is like, Debbie McCrae talks about, uses the talking boundary. You've observed the behavior, you've identified it, you say your thing, and this is my boundary. And so I can't be as close to you as I would like to do because you're lying to me. It isn't safe. So, and it's not like raging out or, all of that. It's just like you're identifying, this is my need, is for safety. So I'm so glad you're here. I hope you're leaning into the betrayed partner, drop-in groups. Troy does one specifically for betrayed partners on alternating Thursdays. He does one for the guys, every Friday morning. So there's lots of resources to support you each both in the journey. and the Betrayed Partner Work Group will start again in April. So lean into all the resources. Email me, Tammy, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com if you're looking for anything specifically too. So, but you can't change him, but you can sure take care of you. Okay, about 6, 8 weeks ago, you showed a schematic of 3 tanks on your Friday morning group: relevancy, competency, and empowerment. Can you review that or refer me to a reference to the article? So do
Sure.
you have your
So we
screen?
have,
Okay, go
I
ahead.
don't know if I have that. We'll check.
That's okay.
But I can talk about them anyway.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So I don't have pictures of that, but it's okay. So
Oh, it's all good.
we have, um, we have 2 tanks. One is the love and belonging tank. It has 1 tank in it. And when that tank is full, then we feel loved. We feel like we are valid, like we matter, that we're important, all of those things. And when it's empty, we feel empty. We don't feel loved. We feel defeated, probably feel a lot of shame, all that kind of stuff. So if you're thinking about how you are right now, like on a scale of 0 to 10, how loved do you feel? That gives you a gauge of how full that tank is. And that tank is like a fuel tank in your vehicle. It always is needing to be refilled. It doesn't stay full because we're using that energy all the time. I'm using that energy to love on other people. I'm using that energy to work through things. And so it's always needing to be filled, whether that's through my higher power, whether that's me practicing self-compassion, whether that's me turning to a loved one to help. But that one's always needing to be filled. And then the other tank has 2 tanks to it, and that's called the relevancy tank. And on one side is the competency, and the other side is empowerment. So competency is, do I have the skills to be able to do whatever it is that I'm doing? So if I like, do I have the skills to be a therapist? Do I have the skills to be a dad? Do I have the skills to communicate with my partner? Do I have the skills to mow the lawn? Whatever. So that tank is contingent on whatever the task is that you're working on. And so if you have a high level of competency, you really know what you're doing. You've practiced, you have the skill set, those kind of things. That tank does not fluctuate very much unless you happen to work in an industry where technology is changing all the time, and so you have to stay up on top of your competency. But for most people, like, once you know how to ride a bike, that's pretty much there and doesn't go down. So if you don't know how to do something, you can raise that tank on your own by going to a class, reading a book, asking a mentor, all those kind of things. So you have a lot of control over this particular tank. The other side is the empowerment tank. How much does the environment in which you live empower you to use the tools that you have? So if you have a high level of skills, but let's say you work in a job where your boss does not value your skill set and does not give you jobs to do, then you don't feel very empowered. And so you don't feel very relevant in that workplace, because even though you know that you know things, your boss is not giving you space to use those tools, and so you feel less relevant. But conversely, maybe your boss thinks that you're amazing and lets you do whatever you want, but you actually have no skills, which can be just as challenging. So you still struggle with feeling relevant because you don't know what you're doing. So you're very grateful that your boss is like, yeah, I believe in you, you could do it, but actually I don't know what I'm doing. So either those two can fluctuate based on the situation. So in a relationship, because we talk about relationships, do I know how to practice empathy? Do I have that skill set? Do I know what, have I learned how to do that? And does my partner provide space to let me do that? Does my partner let me work on that, and vice versa? If that happens, then I'm probably going to feel relevant in this relationship. If that's not happening, I'm going to struggle. And then my shadows of shame are going to show up and those kind of things. So I have a lot more control over this tank than I do the love and belonging tank. Because of the skill set, and I can ask for, hey, this is what I need, or this is what I'm needing. So, or this is what's missing in my ability to use the tools and skills that I have. So that comes from um, the therapist who developed all of that is Adlerian therapy. I don't remember his first name. Alfred Adler is his name. And it actually comes from a parenting book that was written by Amy McCready called If I Have to Tell You One More Time. And
And every parent can relate to that.
right, so she uses it to help us understand why our children behave the way that they do, but I've learned that it really works with why adults work the act the way they do. So if you want to read more about that, it's Alfred Adler or Amy McCready, and If I Have to Tell You One More Time.
Oh, that's really interesting. And I do see the relevance to relationships. And I was talking with our clinical director this morning about a client or potential client, and you hear the stunted growth. Like they're of a chronological age, and then they're of a really different, emotional and living life age, and it's challenging now. In recovery, if we do the actions that we need to do, we can actually grow up. But yeah, that's an interesting book. I'm actually going to add it to my list of books to take a peek at. Okay. So thanks for that question. So going back to what you're saying there about them needing to feel shame, do you think that's why my husband treats me terribly when he is in his active cycle of addiction? Because it seems like he is being cruel intentionally, and then he has the relief part of me staying after a blowout and things calm down. Is this perhaps why he treats me terribly when we get to that part? Not sure if my question makes sense. It does. So yes. Yeah.
So I don't know your partner, but I would imagine that after he treats you terribly, he feels awful. And so he feels the shame. And it is sad because he already believes that he's not enough. He already believes that he's a horrible husband. He already believes that he's not worthy of love and belonging. And unfortunately, he keeps spitting in the soup. He keeps behaving in ways that amplify that, and that's the addictive cycle. So he acts out, whether that's an anger or losing his temper or whatever, and then afterwards his shame tells him, oh, I'm so sorry. Like his shame tells him to go tell you he's sorry. Not empathy. It's not empathy, it's shame. So part of I'm reading through the lines, between the lines of what you're saying, but that sounds abusive. And that's one of the patterns of an abusive partner, is that they keep saying, hey, I'm sorry, it won't happen again, and then it happens again. And the sad part of that is every time it happens, not only does it amplify their shame, but it amplifies your shame. And it tells you that you're not enough, and that you don't matter, and that you're not strong, and all those kind of things, and that you're powerless to get out of the situation, which is that shame destroys relationships faster than anything else. So um, I'm sad that that's happening to you. I'm sad that your husband treats you terribly when he's acting out. I believe he's gonna need a lot more intensive therapy. He's gonna need a therapist. He's probably gonna need a group that he goes to on a weekly basis to be able to work through some of that. And even then, if he's not willing to be completely honest with himself, this cycle may continue. So you're going to need to work on your boundaries, connecting with people who can remind you that you're enough. So getting some support for yourself as well.
Yeah, I have a really strong reaction to this because yeah, it's an emotional abuse cycle, and just because he's an addict doesn't give him an excuse for acting out and treating you horribly. And nothing changes if nothing changes. And so you guys I call it the negative two-step. I'm going to do my little Western dance of you do this, I do this, you do this, I do this. The choreography sucks, and until you say, hey, I'm going to change the choreography, I'm not going to tolerate, no one deserves to be emotionally, verbally, physically abused. So therefore, he's uh, we talk so much about boundaries, like we could, well, in our empowered women's retreat, we may change the name, but we're going to offer that again in September, and we spent hours talking about internal boundaries and external boundaries, and it still wasn't enough, but we're continuing those discussions, but learning to go, these are my needs, and safety, physical, emotional, are among those. And so how do you create the space of going, yeah, I'm not, I see you're upset and all that, but you're not the verbal punching bag or whatever. So a safe boundary for you, because otherwise that pattern will just continue. So we have a residential treatment program for guys like him. So yeah, a group once a week, even with the best therapist, even working with Troy Love for 50 minutes a week isn't going to be enough to change those patterns that are, I mean, this stuff usually starts before age 10. So, somebody in their 20s, they've got a decade. And it's not just the acting out patterns, it's the disconnect, the dissociation, the need to compartmentalize, the need to, so whatever form it took, but there was something that happened usually before age 10. So somebody in their 40s has been doing this for 30, plus years. So getting the right help is what really changes things. But Dr. Rob says this all the times, that partners, you're too nice, to us addicts. Like like it's not okay to get emotionally abused, verbally abused, whatever, so how do you learn to be empowered to stand up for yourself and go, yeah, you could stay with, I'm not talking about that. It's like, I just need to know that I'm okay and I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm going to step away, and having the conversation, when you do this next time, because it will happen again, I'm going to step away so that it doesn't just go, you've abandoned me, which is a whole nother can of fish. So there's so many resources. Please lean into all of these. I'm so glad you're here, but your question totally makes sense. You are not alone. This happens all the time. And I just want you to know there's lifelines for each and both of you. So, okay, here's another one. My husband's religious leader told me once, my SA husband deals with the shame and anger from childhood trauma. Or when, as he deals with this, he will not be an addict anymore. I don't believe that. But is there any truth to this?
I guess it depends on what you're defining as an addict. So the way that I define an addiction is that we've developed a pattern of behavior or used a substance to numb pain that over time has begun to create havoc in our lives. But what part of that is, if you read what addiction is from the um, some agency out there.
American Society of
That
Addiction
one.
Medicine.
Yes, that
How
one.
did I know this?
Thank you. They call it a brain disorder. And what they say, basically, here's what addiction is. Okay. I'm a kid and I've experienced some kind of trauma. And then all of a sudden I stumble on this substance or this behavior and I use it, and oh my gosh, it feels good. And my little neurons in my brain connect and say, oh, I should try that again next time. And so then I do that again, and then I try it again, and oh my gosh, it connects again. And then over time, I now have a literal neural network in my brain of how I manage pain. It's maladaptive, it's not great, but it's really effective for momentarily managing pain, right? So that that doesn't go away. It's similar to when you learn how to read. When you're a baby, you have no neural network in your brain to know how to read. But by the time you're in first grade, your brain has created this neural network so it knows how to read. And even if you never read another book, that doesn't go away. You still know how to put those together, right? So your husband had trauma and shame, and he learned how to use his behavior to numb it. So the theory is that if we help you deal with your trauma and we help you deal with your pain, you won't necessarily need to continue using that neural pathway to act out. What we're hoping that you'll do in recovery is that you'll create new neural pathways in your brain to help manage the pain in a much healthier way. That does not, and that's what we're hoping for. That does not mean that this little neural pathways over here goes away. It doesn't. So that's why when people go to a 12-step meeting, they say, hey, once an addict, always an addict, or hey, I'm Troy, I'm an alcoholic, or whatever. And that's their way of reminding themselves that, hey, I got this neural pathway in my mind that I need to be conscious of and be aware of. Now, religiously, I'm going to make it the assumption that you're a Christian, and so there's this belief that God is going to heal you from your stuff, and I'm not questioning that. That's beautiful. And have I seen that happen? Yes, I've seen that happen with people. So whether you want to put a label on it or not, I don't care. There's a part of me that doesn't go around saying, well, you're an addict and you're an addict and you're an addict and I'm an addict. I'm a human being that struggles. At the same time, that neural network is still there. So I got to be conscious of making sure that I continue to do the things that help build this new neural network, whether that's participating more in my religious activities, reaching out, going to meetings, spending time with my kids, whatever that is a healthy way of managing pain. Because I'll tell you that our brains are lazy. And if these stop working, my brain says, well, I remember, because I was doing that for 20 years. I remember this neural pathway over here, super easy to do. So that's the dilemma. So I don't believe your religious leader is wrong. I just think that it's deeper than that. It's not black and white.
Well, and we get lots of people. In fact, we actually talked about this on the webinar on Monday night, that we get so many people at our residential treatment program that have run off to try to do all this trauma work, but they didn't stop the problematic behavior. And guess what? It's highly triggering. So, so they're acting out all over the place because they're trying to focus on the trauma. Because if they fix the trauma, then all of this is going to magically go away. And it's like, stop the problematic behavior. The trauma stuff, like that's layers. Like and on my journey, which has been a longer time, I have continued to find new layers, but I stayed in recovery the entire time. It wasn't like I had to discover all of that in the first 30 days. And then I wouldn't have been able to tolerate it. She would have been, relapsing all over the place. So the gift is that we get to do it in layers as we're living through it. I am a fan of ASAM, American Society of Addiction Medicine, because it is a mental health. I have a mental health condition, and there isn't a cure. But if I do the things I need to do on a daily basis, I don't have to struggle with any of the negative symptoms of that. But I believe that I'm either in active recovery or I'm in active addiction. There's really no straddling the fence. And I often say this, and I even say it at my 12-step meetings, which I still go to, is addiction is the one place where, gosh, I did all these things and it really worked. And so I'm going to stop doing them. And I was thinking of that when you talked about going back to that really, the super highway of neural pathways of like, I really know this. And then I've got this little country road of the new stuff, so yeah, of course, what is my brain going to do? It's going to go, yeah, I can go 100 miles an hour down that one. So, yeah. So I mean, hopefully the two of you are talking about what do you vision for your future and how do you, address this. But again, we have a residential treatment program. It's really, really good. And we stop the problematic behavior and then address the underlying issues. And the guys, it's life-changing for them, and it's life-changing for partners too. We hear that regularly. So, okay, next question. What is the best way to respond to the wounded partner when they are bringing up other character issues about me, not like, or like, wait, like not having friends? Okay, so this person does not have friends. Feels like I opened myself up to being criticized about anything, making it challenging to find successes.
All right. Do you uh want to be the addict and attack me for not having any friends? And
No, I'd be the partner to not, right?
well,
To the,
I'm gonna be
what's the best way to respond to the wounded partner when they're bringing up character issues about me, like not having friends?
okay. Yes, you're gonna be the wounded partner that's gonna bring up things like I have no friends.
Okay. Okay. All right. Here we go. Troy, it's so frustrating to me. I don't see any progress with this. You don't have any friends. You don't have like I don't see any changes with anything. It's just like you're supposedly not acting out, but you don't have any friends. I don't see a change.
You're really worried that because I don't have any friends, I'm not getting better?
Yes, it doesn't feel like there's any change. How am I supposed to trust that our relationship is going to move forward if I don't see any positive changes?
It sounds like me having friends is really important to you.
Why don't you have friends? Like, why can't you make friends?
Yeah, I ask myself that a lot. Um, I don't know. What is important to you about me having friends?
That's a good question. Oh, flip the script there. So, okay, what is it? I want to see that you're able to make connections with other people. I don't want it to be just us. I have lots of friends. I don't understand why you don't have friends.
I've never really had any friends. I think part of me is scared. I mean, I've been struggling with this stuff for a while, and like, I'm pretty sure they're gonna just not really want to be there for me. I'd rather, I mean, I know that you could leave at any time, but I don't believe you're gonna leave. Um, and I don't, I don't want to hurt. I don't want to be vulnerable like that. Scary.
Okay, now I just want to give you a hug. So, like, no, it's really hard, but like you showed me the vulnerable part. Um, yeah, like, yeah, you took all the air out of my balloon.
Well, that's the goal, right? So at
Yeah.
first I was empathic, and then I asked some questions like, why is it so important for you that I have friends? Okay. What I'm hearing is that it's important for you because you're really afraid that without friends, I'm not going to be successful, and that I'm not, yeah, that I'm going to direct all of my energy on recovery on you, and you're going to be my one and only safety net. And there are going to be days when you don't have the capacity to do that for me. Um, but that's probably the pattern that we've developed over the years, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that your I'm assuming this is your partner. Men have a really hard time making friends. Um, if they were involved in sports when they were in high school and stuff, they might have had a little bit more of a friendship kind of thing. But if they weren't involved in sports and there really wasn't a place for them to do that, and then after high school's over and life goes on, a lot of men really have a hard time having friends. So what tends to happen though is when you've opened yourself up and you've tried to be vulnerable, and then your partner goes right in for the jugular, because they do that not because they're trying to hurt you, but they're doing that because they're scared. They're doing that because they're frightened that things aren't going to get any better, and so they go right to it, right? So part of that is understanding that they're scared, you're scared, and being able to have some empathy for both of that and not react in a way that's defensive. So kind of how I modeled that was like, okay, so I'm hearing that this is really scary. And then we were able to shift that into a healthy dialogue. I would encourage you though to find some support for you, because that's going to be healthy for you in your recovery.
Yes, and there's lots of friends to be found in 12-step, in our drop-in groups. A lot of the guys that go to our drop-in groups or even in our work groups, they connect on a peer support basis. The work groups are once a week, and Troy's attachment wounds is coming up in April, so check that out. I put the work group link in the chat, but people, and that's true for the betrayed partners too. People connect, and get peer support so that they've got somebody they can connect with outside of the group. But yeah, dipping your toe into the vulnerability of getting friends. The opposite of addiction is healthy attachment, and that includes we get to practice empathy with other people that are not our spouse and partner, that where we don't have the risk. We can practice empathy in a 12-step meeting, like, oh, I understand what that person is saying. I've felt like that too. And then we can take those skills and we can start using them, with our spouse. That's a lot of opportunity to learn to do things better. So yeah, really encourage you. Like, it was critical for me early in, and I still have, like, I go to 12-step meetings and they're my friends, so but it was really critical for me early in the process to have those people to lean into. They understood me. They got it. They knew me better than I knew myself. They could see things, happening, to me, or see my brain working, in scary ways, and get me on the proper path. So lean in to help. Okay, next one. 30 years of a new discovery every oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta start over. 30 years of a new discovery every 6 to 12 months. Husband was told by professionals 3 years ago how harmful his porn addiction was to our marriage. He continued anyway. He recently agreed to 90 meetings in 90 days. I needed this boundary to start creating a basic level of safety. He started doing great and then fell back into his pattern where he can justify his manipulation of the agreement depending on what he wants to do each day. He can decide on a whim that he'll go to multiple meetings on days he wants to focus on recovery and skip days that he doesn't want to. As long as he meets 90 days, he feels entitled to do them whenever he wants. I feel abandoned that he cannot keep up even the most basic of a recovery agreement and boundary to attend at least one meeting a day. If I bring up this wasn't the original agreement, I'm accused of not supporting his recovery. He's very proud of the work he's doing, and I'm just incapable of seeing it. That blame creates more abandonment and emotional support. Oh, I am so sorry. Okay.
What comes up for you? I have lots of thoughts, but I'm curious.
Well, yeah. What a manipulative, blame shifting, gaslighting addict, and like this is a guy that needs treatment, and no, yeah, if you bring up that it wasn't the original agreement, you're accused of, and that's one of those where you can say, I hear that that's your reality, but no, the agreement was at least one meeting a day, not, I can do 7 in one day and then not do, them for the next 7 days. So clearly, and these patterns are, so old, it would be difficult. And yes, going to meetings is great. What step is he working? How often is he talking to a sponsor? It's like just warming a seat is social. It's nice, but it doesn't change anything. So I have lots. I'm going to put the treatment link in
Yeah, please.
in there. So
I want to read what you said. He cannot keep even the most basic of recovery agreements and boundaries to attend at least one meeting a day. So just kind of sit with that. He cannot keep even the most basic of recovery agreements. You're not asking him to not look at porn, although that's part of it, right? You're asking him to spend an hour every day going to a meeting. He could, um, because of the way that the internet works, there are meetings 24 hours a day all over the world. So you're asking him to spend an hour. You've asked him, and he's agreed to spend an hour of his time every day for 90 days. And he's not. So, what does that tell you? What that tells me is he needs recovery. He needs a higher level of care if he is interested in saving this relationship with you. That is the basic definition of an addict. You said he's fell back into his pattern of behavior. That's what addicts do. They go gung ho for a little while and then they fall back. It's called the it's called the two step. I call it the two step. So I'll I'll be gung ho over here, and I'm like, I'm gonna work so hard, and I'm gonna go to 7 meetings a day, and I'm gonna call my sponsor, and I'm gonna write in my journal, and I'm gonna like read my scriptures, and I'm gonna pray, and I'm gonna do all those things. No offense, this is not about people who are spiritual, but I'm gonna do all of that stuff, and then that lasts for about 10 minutes, and then I move over here, and I'm like, oh, it's so exhausting. I don't want to do that more. Oh my gosh. I need a break. That was really hard. And so I start to slip and I start to go back to old patterns. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not good. This is going to be really bad. I got to go back over here and I'm going to be so committed. I mean it this time. That's the pattern that we get trapped in, and you can't sustain it. Either one you can't sustain. So what we do is try to create a new very slow changes consistently over time that changes that neural network, and he's not doing that. So I'm hoping that you go get some support for you, because if his behavior is telling you something, and you wishing that he would do it differently, that's you got to look at the reality of it.
Yes. And I'm putting the, we're, like I said, right now it's called the Empowered Women's Retreat. And it was amazing for the women that participated, and we'll offer it again. We're getting the details, but probably September. There are women like you that come to that and have the ability to hold a internal boundary and an external boundary, regardless of what. We don't talk about him. He's not the focus. This is about, the women getting the support that they need. So, okay. The addict says he will always struggle to have empathy for me specifically. How should I respond to these statements?
Well, that sounds like his impotent one is talking. So that's a shame-based statement. So empathy is on one side of the spectrum and shame is on the other, right? So what he's saying is he has so much shame that he's not sure that he can have empathy for you. And that's not uncommon. It's not an excuse, but that's not uncommon. A lot of people who struggle with addiction do not have a high level of empathy capacity. They have a high level of shame. So when I hear words like he will always struggle, what he's really saying is, I hate myself so much that I'm not sure that I can hold space for you. It still hurts. It still hits your rejection wound. It still hits your betrayal wound, all of those things. Empathy is a learned behavior. So he can learn it if he wants to. But I don't know how you should respond to those statements. There isn't a should. It's how do you respond to those statements? Do you say things like, that hurts? It's really hard to hear that. It causes me to wonder if this relationship is important for us. I'm not sure that I can be in a relationship where my partner's not going to have empathy for me. So I'm going to have to sit with what that means for me. If you really believe that you can't do that, because that hurts.
Yeah, as someone with addiction, always and nevers are not a good place for me. I can catastrophize something, or it's always going to be whatever. And I learned early in recovery that if I start a sentence and I am using always or never, I probably need to look at the sentence and go, is that true? Because they're so, black and white. It's, so absolute. And rarely is something that clear cut sometimes. But so for me, but I love what Troy was saying of like, that can be your reality. It also feels like he's giving himself and I can get off the hook with this because like, oh, I'm owning that I'm always going to struggle with this. So therefore your expectations should be lessened because I'm telling you right now that this is the case. So I love what Troy said of like, well, like that hurts. And I'm really gonna have to think about, how I feel about that. The truth though is, he may struggle, and addicts, we can struggle. Some of us struggle forever. I can name some. But it's one of those things where if he's making progress, a more helpful thing for him to say is, I struggle with empathy and I'm going to work on this. I'm going to, it's like a muscle. We can develop it, we can grow it, we can change. So that would be a more helpful thing to say is like, I'm struggling, I'm committed to making progress. I'm not going to be perfect. None of us are. So, okay, next question. It would be encouraging to hear some evidence that you are healing from attachment, betrayal, and trauma. Could you name a few? Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the things that I say a lot is it's not the wound that causes the suffering, it's what I've come to believe about myself. So um, I can tell you that one of my biggest wounds is abandonment. Um, and so one of the core beliefs is that people will not be there for me when I really need them. And I still notice that I react that way. Like I react and I become guarded as a way of trying to protect myself. And so part of how I know that that's getting better is I'm able to recognize when the wall gets up, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta put it down and I gotta be vulnerable and I gotta reach out, and I need to be, and the more that I do that, the more that changes and people do show up for me. Um, but here's some evidences that your wounds are healing. You're not as reactive. You are not as angry. You are much more compassionate. You have the ability to have strong boundaries without being an asshole. Like you're able to say no, and it comes from a place of empowerment, not a place of fierce anger, like I'm going to punch you in the face. I'm able to say no, and I can breathe into that, and I don't react when you don't like my no. It's like my no is my no, and I can see you having a hard time with that, so you work on that, okay? But so I'm grounded. I am able to make healthier choices for myself. My relationships with my loved ones are better. So those are some of the ways that I can tell that my wounds are healing. Is I'm not as reactive. I'm a whole lot more grounded.
And for me, because I also have a massive abandonment wound, among others. But one of the key things, and thank you, Troy, love, was to be able to identify it. And just like he was saying, is like he feels this wall going up, and I'm paying attention to I'm paying attention to my body. I'm paying attention to what reaction I'm having. And then I'm going, oh, wait, my abandonment wound is getting poked. And now that puts it up in my thinking part of my brain rather than, the drama part where, I'll go off and, oh, woe is me or whatever I was going to do. And so it shifts it because I can make a choice about how I act. I don't have to just react. And that was huge. That was a huge shift for me. And then I'm not making amends as often as I would have to otherwise, because if I react, it doesn't go well. So all of those things change. So, but I think you'll feel it. And if you're kind to yourself and just go, yep, there's that wound. Which is why we started at the beginning, like talking about, people want it to be like, I've worked on my trauma, I've worked on everything, and now I don't ever have to deal with that again. And there's always going to be something that, echoes on that. But we don't have to choose to, go sideways with it. So, okay, next question. I am the betrayer and a porn addict. I am 6 weeks since I last acted out. I'm attending 12-step groups daily. I want to say that means like the 90 meetings in 90 days and really going. Thank you. I'm cheering you on. I also attend as many drop-in groups here. My wife doesn't seem to care that I am doing these things. When she is in her betrayal brain, her phrase, she tends to be abusive and I go into defense mode. How do I learn to sit there and be with her? This is very early in the process. I'm so glad you're asking the question.
Mhm. So number one, she's not gonna give you a gold star, okay?
No,
So please don't expect her to give you one. She's not gonna.
no,
So that's why you go to the 12 step meetings. We will give you all the gold stars, we'll
yes.
give you coins,
We'll
we'll
give you
give you all
coins.
kinds
Yeah.
of stuff,
Yeah.
but you don't, she's not gonna give you that.
No.
So when she goes into betrayal brain, as you call it, she's terrified. So she's going into fight or flight, and I would imagine she goes into a high level of anger, and she probably says things that she wishes that she hadn't said, and it's scary for you because then you go into the fight or flight response too. So the one of the tools that you could pick up on or try to work on a lot is the empathy tools, because even when me and Tammy practice it here, and she's pretending to be angry, the empathy brings down the defensiveness. So being able to do that would be helpful. You can reach out to me if you want to, and I can give you some tools for that. But it's practice, a lots and lots of practice. Since you're married to her, you're going to have some time to practice. But that's how you do it. But you have to be able to recognize this is not about you. She's going to tell you that it's all about you, and she's going to point out all the things that you're doing wrong or that you're not doing right enough. So it's going to seem like it's all about you, but it's not actually about you. It's about her and her fear, and that her world has been turned upside down and she doesn't know what in the heck's going to go on and how this is going to affect her future. So if you can recognize that you're doing those things and you continue to be consistent about those, you don't have to be defensive about that. You can just hold space and say, I'm here and you're really scared. You're really scared. I mean, it's only been 6 weeks since I acted out, and you're terrified I'm going to do it again, and you're terrified I'm going to lie to you again, and then your world's going to go upside down. Yeah, that sounds horrible, honey. Thank you so much for telling me that. And I'm here with you. And then don't go into false promises. You just hold space. Just say, that's that's so sad. I'm with you.
Yeah, I often share, I know my past behaviors have been so hurtful and betraying to you. I'm working today to learn to do things better. And just like Troy said, it's not promising, oh, I'll never do that again. That's a massive red flag. When guys leave our residential treatment program, if they're going like, I got this, we know they don't got this, like the ones that are going like, I'm a little scared, I'm not sure. They're going to be the ones that lean into the resources, and they're the ones that are going to continue to connect, and they're the ones that are going to, they're going to learn to do life differently. So, and yeah, 6 weeks, again, stars and chips, whatever. But she's going, I don't know how long you've been married, but like for however many years, however many decades, this has been going on. So, trust is rebuilt over time. I do want to comment, if she is truly abusive, like that is, I would encourage you I would invite you to have a conversation rather than going to this place where you are saying things that feel abusive. Don't maybe accuse her of being abusive, that feel abusive, and I feel defensive. Now we're talking feelings. Perhaps we could have a, hey, time out. We need to talk about this, but let's talk. I want to hear what you need to say, but I want to do it in a productive way so that we can, make some progress. But just holding the space and going, I hear you, I understand, like Troy was saying, I hear you, this is so hurtful. You say that a few times and usually the energy will come down too. But abuse on either side, and we've had guys that come to treatment who have been domestic, like physically abused, and they feel like they deserve it, and they don't. Like abuse on either side is just not okay. So okay, let's see. We'll do one more, and then I'm going to save the rest of them for the next time because
Oh, we have
well,
like
maybe we'll get
12
to
of
those.
them
Yeah,
today. That's
yes,
awesome.
yes. I've got a little cachet of questions, so I'll save them. I am the betrayer and the porn addict. Oops, that one's done. Sorry. My porn addict lied and about porn use for over 30 years, claiming low libido and erectile dysfunction while I was overwhelmed with compassion in virtually sexless union. While I very much wanted intimacy and sex, he was using porn. Now, as condition of recovery, he wants sex to be back on the table because he assumes that he'll eventually not have an ED anymore. I'm no longer interested. I'm over sex. Missed it for a long time, but now it's the root of our problems, and I'm ready for just companionship. If we can manage that, he thinks that's spite. That feels unfair to me. That's a complicated question, but thanks for asking it. And good luck, Troy.
Um, there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
So for 30 years, being told that he's just not interested, he struggled with erectile dysfunction, which is one of the symptoms of porn use, to be honest. There's a high correlation between men, especially younger men, who struggle with erectile dysfunction and their porn use. So there's a high correlation with that. Um, it's not abnormal for a husband or a wife to want to have sex in the marriage. In fact, that's part of what comes with the package. There's a lot of betrayal that's happened, and I'm hearing that you're no longer interested. So that really comes to, is this a deal breaker for you and him? Because that sex is part of a healthy marriage. Now, I'm saying 30 years of unhealthy, there's a lot of work that has to be done with that. And I also understand that maybe if he's working on his recovery, that might change for you, but it might not. And I need you to be honest with yourself and say, like, if this is not something that I can do, I'm just not really interested, then that yeah, and I'm guessing you're being honest with him and he doesn't like the answer. So then he has to decide, well, is that a deal breaker for me? Is it unfair? Yeah, it is. Um, I learned a long time ago that life isn't fair, and with addiction, there is no fairness. Um, it's, what do I need to do for me to be able to feel happy and safe and connected in this life? What can I do that brings me joy and pleasure? And if that's not it, and your partner's wanting that, there's a discussion to be had. There's a lot of individuals who have what's considered sexless marriages, and sexless marriages are basically you have sex less than 10 times a year. That would be considered a sexless marriage. And some people are okay with that, and some people are not. Um, you may want to, I'm not trying to skew you in any way, but you may want to find a therapist who is trained in sex therapy, not sex addiction therapy, but sex therapy, who could maybe work through that. But I wouldn't do that unless there has been a foundation of trust rebuilt. And if your husband is not in recovery, then I don't see that's going to get any better.
So, okay. I'm capturing the rest of the and there's some that are continued. I'm gonna put the link for the previously recorded. And you could always find these. I'm gonna put this in the chat. Webinars, and this will be posted later today, along with all the other ones. So check those out. Okay. Okay. I think I'm getting the rest of them. I just want to make sure. So then these will be asked, brought up at the start of next month. So join us again on the 4th week of the month, but you can always join Troy both on Friday for the guys and on Thursdays, alternating Thursdays for the betrayed partner. So check the schedule. It's all on our website. Grateful for you as always, Troy. Thanks for all the great questions. We appreciate you participating and coming. We have Debbie McCrae is Friday on. She does a great job with pieces for the betrayed partner. So please join that. And I've got calls coming in, so I'm gonna bye everyone.